Hello, welcome back. I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio. Thank you for tuning in. We enjoy your company, that's for sure. Folks, I want you to do us a favor, please. It helps us identify you as a listener, and it also helps us identify the topics that you want covered on this program. Go to our website, www.theunionedge.com. On the right-hand side of the page, 4 big red buttons. You can't miss them. They're like the size of a Buick. Bottom button says take the survey. Survey's 12 questions. It'll take you 3 minutes. Like I said, it helps us identify you, not as an individual, but your demographics. Let us know who's listening, and also the things that you want to talk about. And I guarantee you, this is a big deal for us, and we appreciate you helping us out with that. Speaking of big deals, right now it's with great pleasure I get to reintroduce Admiral Joe Sestak, candidate for Senate in the United States and Pennsylvania. Senator, Admiral, welcome back.
Good to be with you, Charles.
Always a pleasure, Admiral. Always a pleasure. We appreciate you being with us. Now, you did walk across the state from New Jersey to Ohio, but now you're going from city to city. I hope you got good boots on again. But
Same boots, a little bit of glue stuck in them.
There you go. I know that feeling. So, my goodness, a lot of things going on. Let's talk about 9/11 responders out of New York. There was some very specialized legislation put in place to protect them. Let's face it, a lot of very dedicated first responders were exposed to some pretty horrific chemical combinations. We were monitoring and tracking their health, making sure that they got the health care coverage that they needed to protect themselves and their families. That's come up, and it's got to be voted on again, correct?
That's right. In fact, they've delayed so long, it's now expired. In fact, our Senator Toomey, would not co-sponsor it. I went on television after several first responders went and visited him, and he wouldn't meet with them. He had a junior staffer do it. I went on television and said, here's why we have to do it. 1,000 Pennsylvanian firefighters went up there, police went up there at 9/11, and were in the havoc, helping out day in and day out, and never stopped. And the health concerns are immense. Finally, after I went on television, 2 days later, he finally, for political obvious reasons, co-sponsored it. But it hasn't moved. He should be fighting for this because these are equal to our veterans. They defend us at home while our veterans defend us overseas.
I cannot imagine the person who will not support cops, firemen, and paramedics. And we're not talking about union rights or anything along those lines. We're not talking about bigger paychecks. We're not talking about retirement. We are talking about those men and women that volunteered and went into harm's way on our behalf and have paid the price with their health. And now there are people out there in the Senate that don't want to support them and protect them and do the right thing. How shameful.
It is. Because, as you well said, they are our first responders to defend our homes, defend our families. Look, it even goes further than that. I mean, here, Senator Toomey voted to send us to war in Iraq. And then as a congressman and as a senator voted against every Veterans Administration budget that was due up before him through last December. Every single one. Send us out there, whether we're first responders or military, but then don't take care of us. That's why people have lost trust in the public officials of America.
Admiral, I don't get it. I don't understand it. They on one hand will say, oh, look at these great people. They are doing wonderful things for our country. But when it's time to support them, when it's time to make sure that the VA is fully funded and they have the right people on the job doing the right job, they can't do that. They can't be bothered with that. They can't be bothered with, trying to make sure that there are plenty of decent jobs out there for returning veterans, or, they have the health care coverage that they need. How does one recruit for a military in which sitting elected officials vilify the members of the military, refuse to take care of them, and just want cannon fodder. I don't know.
Well, you hit something on the head that George Washington said, our first commander-in-chief, our first president, obviously. And he said, how well we take care of our veterans will determine whether the youth will join up in the future to fight our wars. So you're absolutely right. And, take our first responders also. It goes beyond it. And you mentioned it. It's not just health and those types of issues. It's also just taking care that they have the proper armament. Senator Toomey submitted a bill that said, hey, if you murder a police officer, it's going to be considered a capital offense in terms of death penalty, et cetera. Got it. Absolutely. But voted 3 times against those grants that come from government to the fire departments, yes, but also to our police officers for bulletproof vest and the means to better protect themselves. 3 times he voted to close them down so that they aren't murdered. And that's what I don't understand, is take care of them if you're going to ask them to go into battle for us.
I agree with you. And as a former law enforcement officer, I got to tell you, when your elected officials are not interested in protecting you, that is, it's just not good for morale. It's not good for getting the job done. And Admiral, I got to ask the next question. What about this armor-piercing ammunition that's out there? Where did Senator Toomey come down on that? I mean, there's been some discussion about pulling that off the shelves so civilians don't have it. I mean, my God, what does a civilian need with armor-piercing bullets that penetrate law enforcement body armor?
Absolutely. The criminals want it.
Yeah.
And that's it. I told the sailors on my ship when I was captain, you own a gun, bring it aboard. I'll stick it in the armory. And when we're in the Persian Gulf, I towed a sled, silhouette of a deer on it, and let them go through their rights of having here at home, which is being able to have a Second Amendment right to own a gun and to shoot away as though they're hunting. The best I could do to bring them to what they love to do there at sea. But you know what? Why should our police go up against the weaponry, assault weapons, or these bullets that can pierce the vest that Senator Toomey voted against? Why do they have to go up against them? When we had an assault weapons ban in the 90s, for example, the murders of police officers by assault weapons, which used to be 22% of all murders of our first responders, our police, that is, 22% of them died from assault weapons, dropped to 0 in a year and a half. We owe it to them for common sense gun safety laws.
Absolutely. Admiral, we're not talking about taking people's guns away, but we're talking about, let's have a serious discussion about whether or not people need the kind of ammunition that penetrates law enforcement body armor, or military body armor for that matter. I mean, that's another story in and of itself. Admiral, what else is going on? We got about a minute here.
Well, I will be out there in Indiana County. As you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, after I did my 422-mile walk across Pennsylvania, 16 counties, meeting people, talking with them, doing issues at events and listening to people so they knew I would walk in their shoes, even in Washington, D.C., on the issues they say they need to restore the dream. I'm now going, like I did last week, between cities, 18 miles last week, walking between Wilkes-Barre and Scranton, where I did events on small businesses. Now I'll be in Indiana County on Thursday. I'm going to walk miles, but first I'll do an event at American Legion there in Homer City to talk about how we're not taking care of, but how we can take care of our veterans. For example, Senator Toomey voting against the jobs bill for our veterans 3 years ago and the mental health bill that was bipartisan a year and a half ago. How can we effect better care for our veterans? And then I walked to a young man's business just down the road over in Indiana itself, and Indiana Vac. And when I get there, I'll meet a young man who's 20 today but was 18 in high school. When he was going through Votech, learned how to repair a vacuum machine, went to work in a repair shop, then bought the repair shop, and he wasn't old enough, so it had to be in his parents' name initially, and now he's run a successful business. And this is why it's important. In Pennsylvania, we're creating half as many small businesses as the national average. They create 70% of all jobs. Let's get up to the national average and go beyond it. Why? Because we're Pennsylvanians, and we want our youth to stay here like this young man, where small businesses help us grow the jobs we need with raising wages.
Absolutely, Admiral. It's always a pleasure. Very quickly, how do we find your website?
JoeSestak.com. JoeSestak.com. SESTAK. And thanks for having me on a great Pennsylvania day.
Absolutely. Admiral Joe Sestak, I'm Charles Showalter. You're listening to the Union Edge Laborers Talk Radio.